Yeah, well, if you spend any time out here in the summer, you know that this ferry waiting line here can be just jam-packed with cars all summer long, especially on a holiday weekend. They just cleared out to load up for the boat that's heading out on the Thursday commute, but that's why officials are warning, because of these issues, you could see some really long lines coming up this holiday weekend.
A cascade of problems could mean a tough holiday weekend for ferry travel. With the Wenatchee out of service because of an engine fire, the shuffle means almost every ferry route is either down boats or using smaller or slower craft. Mark Joy lives on Vashon Island, a route usually served by 3 ferries, now down to 2.
Anytime it's down to 2, that's usually an inconvenience. And even this morning, just driving into work, the boat was 15 minutes late, and kind of used to it or expected at this point.
It's a very challenging time right now. I would consider us in a dire situation. It's probably one of the worst we've seen in many, many years.
Compounding that, employees out for COVID cases or vaccinations and side effects. They say ferries also has an aging workforce, so there are more people retiring, and COVID precautions have slowed training to replace them. But officials say they're doing their best to prepare for one of the first holiday weekends with fewer COVID restrictions.
You know, the high travel times, we expect the congestion. There are ways to monitor traffic and, sign up for alerts, get those. You'll understand the wait times a little better.
But the best advice, avoid traveling at peak times at the start and end of the long weekend. Like Mark's planned Friday night dinner in West Seattle.
Oh, goodness. maybe we should rethink our plans. I think we're going to at least try to walk on, so try to avoid and maybe take an Uber.
On the issue of boat numbers, ferries plans for the next 20 years to do a lot of change. They're replacing 13 boats that need to be retired and adding an additional 3 to meet what is projected to be the growing demand as our region gets even more people. We're live in West Seattle tonight. Michael Crow, King 5 News.
On this first day of summer, people are lining up to get out of town, but some want to get there a little bit before everyone else. Like this person cutting the ferry line.
Go ahead and turn around.
And being told to turn around.
What does the person think that they have the right to do that?
Ferry workers say line cutting happens on a daily basis in Edmonds. They saw at least 3 cutters in less than 2 hours today. Among them, this guy.
Waiting our time.
On vacation from Atlanta.
Waiting our time.
He says it was an honest mistake. We'll call him the accidental tourist.
Our 2 wives were sitting in the back saying, "You guys need to turn around. You got to go back the other way." And we're like, "Well, okay, we'll go back.
There have been at least 2 arrests in recent weeks for assault and harassment in the ferry line. Edmonds Police and the State Patrol are now going after line cutters. Police putting out this tweet saying, "We've had too many complaints turn into road rage situations."
When you're sitting here and you're waiting and somebody cuts in front of you, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, hey, we told them you got to get in line, and they just kind of roll up their window and say, "Deal with it."
Ferry workers are often on the receiving end of frustrated passengers' rants. Traffic control workers keep an eye out for violators, but they tell us unless one of them catches a cutter in the act before he gets to the toll booths, they get off free.
I apologize. I want to kick them out, but I can't do anything. So unless our cashiers down there actually see it, they can't really do anything about it.
That's where the police and these emphasis patrols come in. If they catch you cutting the line, it's a fine of $139. Live in Edmonds, Eric Wilkinson, King 5 News.
Or does he mean it's very chilly?
Melissa Pietrosanti and her family are visiting Seattle from Portland.
Is that a bad dad joke?
And a ferry ride to Vashon Island was high on their to-do list.
I think it's fantastic. It's vital to people that live in the area for work and pleasure.
Besides being a critical link for people living on both sides of the Sound, the ferry system is also a big tourist attraction, helping lure visitors back. But not all of them can count on a smooth trip. The Vashon route is one of several impacted by an ongoing shortage of ferry crew members, causing delays and cancellations.
The disruptions are widespread this weekend, stretching from the San Juan Islands to Point Defiance in Tacoma.
Washington State Ferries says passengers should plan for longer waits. Quote, "We apologize for the inconvenience and appreciate your patience and understanding as Washington State Ferries works to maintain as much service as possible."
It was probably like 35, 45 minutes that we waited.
Kate Vallis is visiting from Utah and did not mind the delay.
Every time you come to Washington, you gotta take a ride on the ferry.
The ferry system says some travelers to the San Juan Islands are learning their vehicle reservations are canceled and standby spots are very limited.
I am not sure what that noise is.
On this voyage, Pietro Santi got lucky.
It's probably something to do with how the ferries run, huh? It was so smooth. I didn't even check the schedule. Normally I kind of stress about that and screen grab the times, and we pulled up 8 minutes before and just went right on.
Ted Land, King 5 News.
What else can I do? The mayor today said he would like to see the lawsuit dropped and wants the sheriff to come to the table with the city and reach a decision through their interlocal agreement oversight process. The sheriff's office says that is not the issue. They say that this is about the enforceability and constitutionality of the ordinance. In Burien, Natalie Swaby, King 5 News.
Well, right now, the U.S. Supreme Court is hearing a case that could change how cities like Burien penalize homeless people sleeping outside. The case will decide whether local governments can enforce laws against people sleeping outside when there is no shelter space or other places to go. We expect a ruling.
What else can I do? The mayor today said he would like to see the lawsuit dropped and wants the sheriff to come to the table with the city and reach a decision through their interlocal agreement oversight process. The sheriff's office says that is not the issue. They say that this is about the enforceability and constitutionality of the ordinance. In Burien, Natalie Swaby, King 5 News.
Well, right now, the U.S. Supreme Court is hearing a case that could change how cities like Burien penalize homeless people sleeping outside. The case will decide whether local governments can enforce laws against people sleeping outside when there is no shelter space or other places to go. We expect a ruling.
Shot in third.
Towards the parking lot and hid
for several hours as the investigation went forward.
Yeah, Ranji and Niku, there were actually a lot of people inside the hotel when the shooting happened. One guest tells us he ran towards the parking lot and hid between the cars for safety. Now, the shooting happened yesterday just after 3 p.m. Seattle police say the Washington State Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, along with SPD's Community Response Group, came to the hotel to make an arrest. Investigators say as 3 officers moved in, the suspect pulled out a gun and started fighting one of the officers. The other 2 opened fire and ended up killing the suspect. One guest tells us he heard several gunshots.
About 7-8 shots, and everybody could hear from the lobby. I mean, I think it was 3rd, 4th floor.
The vast majority of the arrests that we do require no force at all. These are the exception when a subject presents a firearm and tries to hurt or kill our officers, but we train to be ready for that.
SPD says one of the officers was grazed by a bullet and sustained a minor injury in the leg. That officer was treated here at the scene yesterday. Now, right now, it's unclear if the suspect fired at police. SPD says they will be releasing more information about this shooting today, so we'll stay on top of that and bring you the latest details. For now, reporting live, Priscilla Holgan, KIRO 7 News.
Thanks, Priscilla. Court documents are revealing the final words uttered by a Renton teen who was killed over the weekend. Now, this is the home on Camas Avenue Northwest where officers responded to on Saturday afternoon. They found a 15-year-old shot in a bedroom. Prosecutors say surveillance video shows the victim and the 16-year-old suspect hanging around the house. A couple of hours later, authorities say shots went off and the teen charged in the shooting called 911. The teen stayed at the home and told police where to find the victim. Police say officers got him alert enough to tell them his age. He then said, quote, "I'm going to die." The teen passed away at the hospital. It turns out the teens were not even supposed to be together. The suspect was being investigated for a drive-by shooting, and there was a no-contact order in place. The teen is being charged as an adult for first-degree manslaughter and unlawful possession of a firearm. The 16-year-old is in juvenile detention on $1 million bail. His arraignment is scheduled for May 1st.
Now to an update on a shooting in Thurston County. We brought you this story earlier this week, and we've learned a group of bar patrons actually helped police in their investigation, actually holding down a shooting suspect until Tenino officers could get there. Now, the Thurston County Sheriff's Office says a man in his 60s shot and killed a person during some sort of fight at the old Highway 99 Bar and Grill. Now, this happened on Tuesday night. Authorities say the other suspect was a woman in her 40s. She's also in custody facing related charges.
New developments this morning in the murder of 4 University of Idaho students. The legal team for Brian Kohberger, the man accused of the November 2020 killings, has filed his official alibi. In newly filed documents, Kohberger says he was out driving at the time of the
Long lines and extended wait times greeted many ferry passengers on Thursday.
Added to the one-boat service, it was a double whammy this morning.
According to Washington State Ferries, a virus protection software error caused the fare collection system to stop working. The toll booth slowdown meant everything had to either be written down or cashed.
It's kind of frustrating trying to plan, to go over to Seattle, which is only 35 minutes, but sometimes you have to wait 2 hours, between boats.
Along with the technical problems, the Mukilteo, Clinton, and Bainbridge, Seattle routes were down to 1 boat. Nancy Shars, who lives on Bainbridge, says she left at 5:30 in the morning to catch the 6:20 ferry.
Had a 9:30 doctor appointment and made it by 20 minutes. So that was frustrating.
According to Washington Ferries, the electronic fare system was back up and running in the early afternoon, and 2 boats were restored to service. For those like Nancy who commute often, it's unacceptable.
They used to be, you could count on them, and you can't count on them anymore.
State Senator Ron Muzal, who represents Island, Skagit, and Snohomish counties, says we need a faster solution.
Let's build some diesel ferries that can get people from point A to point B, and let's worry about this hybrid ferry sometime in the future when we're not caught in a situation where we don't even have enough boats to take care of what we need to do.
While those that are stuck in line hope some sort of relief is near.
They've got to do better, and the reason they have to do better is because I know they can do better.
Now, Governor Jay Inslee announced his proposed 2024 supplemental budget yesterday, and in it were plans to allocate quite a bit of money towards Washington State ferries. Joyce.
Kristen, thank you.
It's been a long time coming, but the life of this walkway at the Bainbridge Ferry Terminal is coming to an end.
This structure was built 50 years ago. The walkway this timber walkway that's here.
Washington State Ferries is replacing it with a wider, safer concrete structure.
It'll be ADA compliant, it'll be seismically safe, and it will have some places for people to sit, and there's heat as well.
Contractors will begin working on this $33 million project this week. Starting this Thursday at 1 a.m. until Wednesday at 3 a.m., ferry service will be reduced to one vessel between Bainbridge and Seattle. And cars, motorcycles, bicycles, and scooters will not be allowed on board. WashDOT says this is to ensure the safety of its passengers during construction. Officials did confirm this is the longest vehicle closure at the Bainbridge Island terminal. However, they did say the ferry system has implemented passenger-only access for other terminals during other major projects.
In Mukilteo, Clinton, I remember it being shut down for a week while we did the tower replacements. So these are all projects over the last 30 years that we've done at different terminals.
To help people get across the Sound, there will be a 3-boat service between Edmonds and Kingston. There's also the Kitsap Fast Ferry between Seattle, Kingston, Bremerton, and Southworth. You could also drive down through Tacoma. Reporting for King 5 News, I'm Brady Wakayama.
Well, how's that for a beautiful view? The ferry from Bremerton arriving at the dock here in Seattle. Going to offload and then reload with passengers once again. Now, the Washington State ferry system not mincing words about this situation. They call it dire and say, please stick with them as they try to get everything back online. After a year at home, the sunshine is a little brighter in Seattle this Memorial Day weekend.
It's just different from having to drive somewhere. You get to be on the water, to travel over. It's just a fun experience.
As travel finally starts to pick up, the Washington State ferry system is fighting to keep up. Starting tomorrow, Tuesday, the Seattle to Bremerton route will be serviced by just one vessel. That means a lot of red lines on the schedule. A system that runs 18 boats is currently down to 16.
It's a very challenging time right now. I would consider us in a dire situation. It's probably one of the worst we've seen in many, many years.
What started as damage from an engine fire on the MV Wenatchee back in April caused WSF to shuffle boats around. Today, nearly every route is impacted, running less vessels or smaller vessels. So, what does this mean for you?
Just make sure that you're planning to get there, in enough time for if you're time sensitive, wherever you're going, to just give yourself that extra time.
Complicating the issue, the ferry system expects holiday travel to continue through Tuesday. That holiday travel picking up here as the cars start to back up for that ride to Bremerton, right as the Mariners game is getting out, I should say. Look out for those revised ferry schedules as the new schedule goes into effect tomorrow. In Seattle, Sebastian Robertson, King 5 News.
Yeah, Mark, especially with that Bremerton run. And Patty Rubstello also said that a COVID outbreak, not a labor sick out, caused the island cancellations. Sunny in Seattle today, but still some choppy seas for state ferries.
As of today, things are good, sailing as well as we can with the crew.
It comes after multiple cancellations in the San Juans, which caused chaos, headaches for weekend commuters.
You know, we've had a lot of staff out because they've tested positive with COVID, and then that has a ripple effect with other staff needing to be quarantined.
So just to be clear, you're saying what happened up in the San Juans was a COVID outbreak, not a sick out?
Everything that we saw is, you know, a lot of people sick. COVID clearly part of it.
And that is on top of reduced runs on the important Bremerton to Seattle route, which has just one boat for the foreseeable future.
You know, the Wenatchee fire took a boat out for us.
Anything else that can be done before mid-October?
We looked at everything that we could as far as what other options we had, and the only other option was to put a really small boat on that would disrupt service even more.
Rubstello and Congressman Rick Larsen used the opportunity to highlight the need for more funding and the House bill, which would allocate money for the electrification of the fleet, like the Norwegian system.
We see that they are resilient, they are working well. We had some issues about getting enough power to the ferry, but then we built these onshore batteries.
So any kind of disruption in any kind of the transportation infrastructure has long-term effects on our community.
Former San Juan County Commissioner Rick Hughes says the state has underfunded needed maintenance and service needs for years, which has led to today's problems.
We need to build boats. It's as simple as that. We had 26 at one point, and now we're down to 18 or 19 that are actually functioning.
Rubstello doesn't dispute it, meaning these kind of waves across the system will likely be seen again. I talked to the presidents of two unions today which represent ferry workers. They told me there was no coordinated effort, no sick out, and the leader of one of the unions told me a nationwide shortage of merchant mariners has led to the issues that we're seeing in the Puget Sound region now. That is the story for now. Live at Coleman Dock in Seattle, I'm Chris Daniels, King 5 News.
Chris, thank you.
Tonight, a lot of those community questions focused on staffing and the number of vessels in the fleet. Those questions come as 300,000 people are expected to travel by ferry this weekend. So tonight, we asked the ferry system how it's doing ahead of what's expected to be a busy summer.
Washington State Ferries prepping for the fleet's peak.
Summertime is the Super Bowl for the ferry system. We carry about twice as many people in the summer months as we do in the winter months.
This comes as it's been battling staffing shortages that led to recent cancellations and reduced schedules.
There's just this worldwide shortage of trained mariners, and so that's what we're up against. So we're hiring, we're training as fast as we can and promoting our people as quickly as we can.
The ferry system has been working to address the crew shortage by trying to get a younger generation interested and widening its recruitment nationwide. It lost 130 workers out of nearly 2,000 because of vaccine requirements in 2020. But the ferry system says the biggest impact is an aging workforce.
We need to move our mates up to captains. We need to move our able-bodied folks up to the mate positions, that type of a thing. Where we're short right now is in the deck officer position, and it takes months and years to become a deck officer.
The ferry system says it will need 100 new licensed deck officers by 2027, all because of the number of officers eligible to retire.
We've been able to restore most of those, but there are a couple of routes that are still down. That includes the Triangle route out of West Seattle, and also Port Townsend-Coupeville, which is a popular tourist route.
As we head into summer, the ferry system citing a boost in confidence with 95% reliability for routes that have been impacted the most, like the Anacortes San Juans and Seattle Bainbridge.
Everybody in the state of Washington owns a piece of these boats, so I say get out and enjoy them.
And go ahead and prepare for long waits this weekend with those busiest travel times kicking off on Thursday. If you do plan to travel by ferry, the ferry system suggests walking onto a ferry to avoid those long lines or leave early in the morning or late at night if possible. For now, live in Seattle, Julie Calhoun, King 5 News.
These ferries need to be functioning and budget needs to be a priority, and we need to get the ferry system working.
A strong message to the Washington State ferry system from Jennifer Brothen, who's been relying on its services to get to and from her home on Vashon Island for 30 years.
This is our livelihood. We depend on being able to get back and forth. There's a lot of people that not only live on the island, but tourism as well. And so it really impacts everybody.
King 5 News has reported on the obstacles the ferry system has encountered over the years, dealing with aging vessels and staffing shortages, both of which are impacting services on routes.
Every day you're commuting, you never know what you're going to get. And so you're really at the mercy of the ferry system, which is obviously very problematic most of the time.
This past week, Washington State Ferries released a new contingency plan. The agency says full route restoration is not expected until it gets new ferries in 2028. Right now, it has 15 vessels it says it can reliably operate, with 6 other boats out of service due to staffing and mechanical issues. Washington State Ferry says restoration will be gradual and will depend on when new vessels enter service. Routes like the Fauntleroy, Vashon, Southworth, and Seattle Bremerton would all get another boat. However, the international service to Sydney, BC is currently shut down. The agency hopes to restore that in 2030. Reporting for King 5 News, I'm Brady Wakayama.
Well, these changes impact nearly every run in the state ferry system, and we're already seeing some long lines. Of course, the big test is going to come on Monday when people go back to work. Just take a look at the lines over on this side and the empty grocery store over on this side, and you knew something was different this Saturday on Whidbey Island.
The ferry system is the biggest problem with living on the island.
Robin Thompson manages the local grocery store.
This is home.
She says she hasn't seen it like this since she moved here in 2003.
I came to visit someone and I never went home.
Sure, there's been some issues with the boats.
They break down, then you'll go one boat, but this year it's been harder than most.
Robin isn't too concerned about keeping stock in the store, but when people can't get to Langley or Coupeville.
We are tourist driven. We have a population here, but the South End's population is very low. So yeah, we do count on all the tourists that we do get.
She worries they'll get stuck over here waiting in Mukilteo.
If you're going to sit here and just do nothing, this is a good place to do it, yeah.
Pastor Andy Velker missed the noon boat and tried to find the silver lining in being forced to wait 1 hour. He does worry about those who have to go to doctor's appointments or commute for work.
The worst part is those who work on the other side.
It sure sounds like a hassle.
Yeah, I tried to leave once and I came back.
But that's the thing about island people, the thing that made both Robin and Andy move here.
The people are so kind and loving, neighbors to everybody.
We'll help each other, we'll all make it through it.
State Ferries is describing this as temporary, although they're not saying when they'll be able to restore service to its old levels. In Mukilteo, Amy Marino, King 5 News.
Right now I'm standing at the spot where ferries take off from Seattle to Bainbridge Island. This is just one of the routes that has seen issues recently. The Seattle to Bainbridge route was down to just one boat yesterday due to an unexpected maintenance issue, and 2 other routes were impacted by staffing shortages. 2023 has been a year with 2 major challenges for the Washington State ferry system.
It's been crewing concerns, a lack of crew. We're also dealing with a lack of vessels.
Evidence of these issues were obvious just the past 24 hours, with an unexpected maintenance issue causing the Seattle-Bainbridge route to be down to 1 boat for part of yesterday.
Unfortunately, we missed a couple of sailings, but we did have a spare boat, fortunately, to fill in, and that remains the case today with Kitsap continuing on the Bainbridge route while we continue to look at what went wrong with Chimacum.
And today, 2 routes were impacted by not enough crew members. The San Juan Inter-Island ferry was down most of the day, and the Point Defiance to Tahlequah route missed 2 round-trip sailings this morning due to staffing.
We are funded for the minimum required by the Coast Guard crew members per boat. So just 1 crew member not showing up, we can't safely sail.
The ferry spokesperson said ideally they should have 26 ferries in their fleet, but the current number is only 21. And many times, not all of those boats are running due to maintenance issues, causing service to be minimized and less reliable.
It's a difficult situation that we're in right now. We are not completely back to what our pre-pandemic schedules were.
In 2024, they hope to keep improving their staffing levels, but say it won't be until around 2028 that they start to see new vessels.
We're hopeful that things will get better in the next couple of years crewing wise, but as far as vessels, that's a couple of years down the road before we get a new vessel. It takes time to build a vessel.
The Port Townsend and Coupeville route also has cancellations tonight, but that is due to tidal conditions. In Seattle, Connor Board, King 5 News.
Washington State Ferries released a service contingency plan for how it plans to add services when more vessels and staff become available. The agency hopes to see their staffing levels increase in the next few years, but the problem is with the vessels. The agency says the full route restoration is not expected until it gets new ferries in 2028. For now, the agency says it can reliably operate 15 vessels as a baseline. Now let's take a closer look at a few routes. The Port Townsend-Coupeville route, it's currently down to one vessel year-round. As more boats come into service, Washington State Ferries is hoping to add another boat during the late spring to early fall season. Other routes like the Fauntleroy-Vashon-Southworth and Seattle-Bremerton would also get another boat. Washington State Ferry says restoration will be gradual and will depend on when new vessels enter service. International service to Sydney, BC is completely shut down right now, and the agency is hoping to restore that in 2030.
Riding our state ferries is taking a toll, especially for folks like Hank Hazen, who crosses from Kingston for his excavation business.
I try not to ride this boat too much because, yeah, it is expensive.
Ferry rates jumped 4.25% today as post-pandemic ridership continues to lag. It is rising, but it's still just 77% of pre-pandemic levels. That's creating an $8.7 million hole that has the ferry system taking on water, and people like videographer Harish Kumar second-guessing their travel plans.
I think about sometimes, do I even want to go there because the rates are so high? And so I think about shooting somewhere else, right?
Tolls are up anywhere from 40 cents to $2.25 this year, depending on the route, with another 4.25% hike planned for next year. Even with those increases, ferries will likely have to look to the legislature to fill that nearly $9 million gap.
How do you justify this kind of a rate hike to the public?
We need to increase the rates in order to meet the financial target, while also being as considerate as we can that these are realities that it impacts people's lives on how they choose to or how they can get to work or travel and otherwise.
The increases come as the ferry service continues to struggle. Crew shortages increasingly lead to crossings being canceled and long lines at the docks. The fleet is showing its age with boats routinely out of service. This summer, the Chelan ran aground in the San Juan Islands, taking it out of service at the height of tourist season. It all has passengers' faith in the ferries sinking.
I have no confidence level.
Washington's is the largest ferry service in the country, and while riding is getting more expensive, many still find it invaluable.
It's not easy or cheap to keep boats as big as they are going.
The last ferry increases were last year and the year before that, both at 2.5%. Live at the Edmonds Ferry Dock, Eric Wilkinson, King 5 News.
Washington State Ferries says that its vessels are either in maintenance or they're being repaired, and many of their routes are down to just one ferry. This comes at a time where hundreds of thousands of travelers are expected to travel by ferry this holiday weekend. Being one of the last cars to make it onto the ferry is always a win.
We can tell by where we are on the hill whether or not we're going to make the ferry.
Especially on a holiday weekend with a fleet that hasn't been this sparse in at least a decade.
It is touch and go for this line.
Paul Shipman says he and his wife are constantly looking at Washington State Ferry's app to see wait times and potential cancellations.
The whole object of coming to Whidbey Island is to relax, and the ferries add a dimension of anxiety.
Washington State Ferries predicts nearly 300,000 passengers will board a vessel from Wednesday through Sunday and says to prepare for delays or cancellations.
It's frustrating for us, and we know it's frustrating for the users of the ferry system. but we're working on it.
Normally, there are 21 ferries in operation. Now there are only 14, eliminating 1/3 of the fleet. 4 vessels are getting work done and 3 are in Eagle Harbor for maintenance.
There's not a lot of shipyards in this area that can get a ferry in, and if they can, they might be filled with other large vessels, military vessels.
In October, the Chimacum's engine malfunctioned on the route and there's no timeline for its repair. In September, the Walla Walla was pulled from service due to a propeller damage.
And they're going 16, 18 hours a day, every day of the week.
While Shipman and his wife were able to get to Whidbey Island, they'll be checking to see the return times.
We tend to stay up there and avoid Sundays. Sundays coming off of Whidbey Island is a big challenge.
Washington State Ferries tells me this will continue to be a problem until we get new ferries, and that's not likely to happen for at least 3 to 5 years. Here in Mukilteo, I'm Kristen Goodwillie, King 5 News.